In this video, we'll review solving one-step equations. We're going to do adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So, one thing to remember is that an equation is a math sentence that does contain an equal sign. So the goal of solving an equation is to find the value of the variable. A variable is a letter, such as X, could be Y, could be M, could be anything. Any letter. The only letters we usually don't use are O because it looks like a 0 and an I. So in order to solve for the variable, we isolate the variable on one side of the equation using inverse operations. So in inverse operations undo each other. So the inverse of addition is subtraction. The inverse of subtraction then is addition. The inverse of multiplication is division. And the inverse of division is multiplication. Okay, now let's practice some. So we're going to use the inverse operations to solve for the variables. So here I have x plus 4 equals negative 7. The inverse operation of addition is subtraction, so therefore to get the x by itself, I subtract 4 from both sides, So this makes a 0 pair. 4 minus 4 is 0. I'm left with x equals negative 7 minus 4 is negative 11. The next equation I have is x plus 10 equals 42. Again, I want to isolate the variable x. In order to do so, I have to use the inverse operation of addition, which is subtraction. So therefore, I'll subtract 10 from both sides. Again, 10 minus 10 is a 0 pair, leaving me only with x on that side. So 42 take away 10 is 32. I have the x by itself, I've isolated it, x equals 32. In the next equation, I have x minus 14 equals negative 20. Again, I want to isolate the variable, x. I do that by doing the inverse operation of subtraction, which is addition. I'm going to add 14 to both sides. Negative 14 plus 14 is a 0 pair, leaving me only with x. Negative 20 plus 14 is negative 6. X equals negative 6. The next equation is x minus 10 equals 7. Again, I want to isolate the variable x. The operation is subtraction. I want to use the inverse operation, which is addition. I will add 10 to both sides. Negative 10 plus 10 is a 0 pair, leaving me only with x. And 7 plus 10 equals 17. X equals 17 in this case. Moving on to the next set. When I have a number next to a variable, that means multiplication. So I have 3x equals 12, or 3 times a number, x equals 12. So I need to use the inverse operation of multiplication to isolate the variable x. The inverse operation of multiplication is division. I will divide each side by 3 to isolate the x. When I do 3 divided by 3, that's a 1 pair. So I have 1x, or x equals 12 divided by 3, which is 4. In the next equation, I have negative 4x equals 20, which means negative 4 times a number x equals 20. So we have to isolate the variable x by using the inverse operation. The inverse operation of multiplication is division. Don't let the negative sign fool you. However, when we're dividing to get the variable by itself, we have to divide by the coefficient, which is negative 4. So I need to divide both sides by negative 4. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is a 1. 1x, which is the same as x, equals 20 divided by negative 4 equals negative 5. The next equation I have is x divided by 10 equals negative 4. I need to use the inverse operation to isolate the variable x. The inverse operation of division is multiplication. So I show multiplication by putting parentheses there. I'll multiply both sides by 10. So when I do 10, that's essentially 10 divided by 10, which is 1, 1x. That's just x. And again, I'm going to multiply over here. Negative 4 times 10 is negative 40. I've isolated my variable x and solved. Alright, the last one. So I have x divided by negative 15 equals 2. So some number divided by negative 15 equals 2. I have to use the inverse operation of division to isolate my variable, which is x. So the inverse of division is multiplication, and again, don't let the negative sign fool you there. I have to multiply by negative 15 on both sides. So negative 15 divided by negative 15 is 1. That leaves me with a 1x, or just x. And then on the other side, I'm going to multiply 2 times negative 15, which is negative 30. So I've isolated the variable in every single one of these examples, which is the goal of these solving for equations.